Hi guys, welcome to your English language paper 1 on Karenina. I shall take you through all the questions with examples. The extract is here, guys. I always encourage that you pause the video for the extract or go onto my website where you can purchase the extract and work through it yourself. Pause it and look at the extract, understand it before we go through the questions. As you're reading, pay close attention to the structure, so what we focus on at each given section, the beginning and the end. Focus on any key pieces of language that the writer uses and ensure that you understand what is going on in the opening of the text. Okay, guys, and then we'll go straight into question 1, okay? Background information we need before we read is this, or before we try to attempt analysis. The Oblonsky family of Moscow is torn apart by adultery. Dolly Oblonsky has caught her husband, Stivia, having an affair with their children's former governess and threatens to leave him. Stiva is somewhat remorseful but mostly dazed and uncomprehending. Stiva's sister Anna Karenina, wife of the St. Petersburg government official Karenin, arrives at the Oblonskys to mediate. Eventually, Anna is able to bring Stiva and Dolly to a reconciliation. Obviously, key information in there about adultery, the division of a relationship, the husband is caught having an affair, so we know that this is going to be probably emotional, guys. Key contextual information then, guys, is that it's 19th century Russia and writers were promoting communal living and the emancipation of women. Russia was changing in terms of society, rural, agricultural and westernised. So that means that women were starting to get a bit more independence about them. We might consider that and also consider what that means for men as well. Question 1 we'll do really quickly is this. So using just the following lines with everything was in confusion in the Oblonsky house down to painfully conscious of it. List 4 things about the Oblonsky relationship. So read those lines again, guys. List 4 things. My answer is coming up for you. Again, this should take us the minimal amount of time. The 4 things I have outlined are as follows. The wife has discovered the husband's affair. The affair was with the governess. The affair lasted 3 days. All members of the family were aware of the affair. So again, there we go. Nothing difficult before we move to question 2, which will focus on language analysis. Question 2 then, how does the writer use language to present stepping? And it's in this extract here. Again, pause the video, bullet point the 4/5 quotations you would analyse where possible, single words, before I break it down for you now. So breaking it down, I would look at the following things. So the sections in red, his eyes twinkle gaily, cheerfully. Suddenly remembered he was not sleeping in his wife's room. The smile vanished from his face, knitted eyebrows, oh. Quarrel with his wife, the hopelessness of his position, worst of all, his own fault. Those are the things we're going to try and analyse, guys, and I'm going to show you an example. Have a go yourself, time yourself 15 minutes. That is your success criteria there before I show you how I would start. So have a go yourself, 12 to 15 minutes, close language analysis, offer an alternative interpretation, and I'm going to show you my start now. I might start like this. Stepman is presented in 2 different ways in the extract. Firstly, he seems to wake up with an idealistic, happy idea concerning his marital relationship. Secondly, and when he remembers his own behaviour, he is presented as slightly despondent in his realisation that he is to blame. Initially, we are told his eyes twinkled gaily, and the adverb gaily implies that he has no cares in the world and that he is completely content in his life. However, in stark contrast, we are also told later in the extract, the smile vanished from his face. Here, the verb vanish suggests his happiness and contentment is permanently wiped out and perhaps will cease to ever exist. Here, the reader wonders if this is foreshadowing the upcoming fate of the relationship. Guys, try and assess yourself there. So annotate your answer with that code or those codes and see how well you've done. Or send me your answers at Stacey Ray before we move to question 3. We have 2 options for structure. We can use Freytag's pyramid, so pause the video here and make a note of those terms because that's what we're going to look for in the extract. Or we can potentially use other terms like equilibrium, disequilibrium, climax and foreshadowing. I would go back through the extract now and try to identify Freytag's pyramid as well as those terms there. How many can you find before I break down the extract and show you once again my example? We are expected to comment on the opening. So if we look, we've got happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. So clearly, we've got a sense of disequilibrium, guys, with the repetition of unhappy. It creates tension. It's uneasy. It implies that the family we're going to meet are unhappy. And we start to wonder why that is. We also then get that compound with the abstract noun confusion, that this particular family are confused, and the idea that the husband was carrying on an intrigue. Straight away, the reader is feeling uneasy. There's tension. We have questions about the affair, about the household, and what's left of the relationship. So that is how I would start. The affair is obviously the rising action as well, guys. The exposition, I suppose, as well, was the idea that they are unhappy here. The disequilibrium is sustained, and it appears that the relationship is ruined, could not go on living in the same house as with him. It foreshadows the inevitable split of the couple. We wonder why everyone else knows about the affair and what that adds to the events and the relationship. The foreshadowing of the inevitable split. Again, if we look at this subordinate clause, not in his wife's bedroom, is that the opening to the climax, an emotional climax here, that he finds himself isolated. And so does she. And remember, the context is that women were starting to get a bit more independent here. Now, it's interesting then, because the next section actually juxtaposes the idea that they're unhappy and that there's an affair with vocabulary like gaily and cheerfully, and then the notion that he's not in his wife's room. So actually what he views of the marriage, probably because it's still a patriarchal society, and what has happened in her eyes, are two very juxtaposing feelings, aren't they? We also get the introduction of the speech. Therefore, we get the emotional climax here. It is developed at the idea that it's his fault. So we are really high tension here, which is climactic in the eyes of Stepan in his perspective. And then that is supported by the abstract noun hopelessness. Bring in the idea that he won't be forgiven, and again that plays into the idea that Russia was becoming a bit more westernized and that women were finding their way, and also it implies that what he has done is in fact unforgivable here, guys. And we finish with a few ideas of the disequilibrium here, where she's holding the letter with horror and despair. That is hugely climactic now in terms of her emotions. And again, in terms of how do we finish? Well, we finish with disgraceful. I think that implies that he has done something worse than just betray her trust, something worse than an affair, perhaps. Our success criteria is straightforward. Use the whole source, try to do 4 paragraphs, use your structural terminology, and always ensure that you explain how the reader feels and how we respond. Have a go before I show you my example. The immediate focus on an unhappy family creates a sense of unease, and the disequilibrium is immediately established. Additionally, as an exposition, this introduction seems to foreshadow a doomed familial relationship, and so the reader expects high emotion. Furthermore, the follow-up paragraph introduces one particular reason for families being unhappy, and this is where the emotional climax begins. Husband was carrying on an intrigue. This revelation creates a number of questions concerning the central relationship and the issues surrounding this. So as I said, guys, I hope that helps. Time yourself again, 12 to 15 minutes. Use the success criteria, and I'll bring up a mark sheet now so you can mark yourself. The mark sheet is here. Annotate yourself again, see how successful you are. If you want, send your answers to me. Download the pack from my website, www.stacey.co.uk, before we look at the big question, which is question 4. Question 4. A student having read this section of the novel stated, the writer really allows the reader to experience the intense emotions of both Stepan and Dolly, and also leaves the reader expecting the relationship to fail. Starting at line, and again every detail of his quarrel with his wife was present to his imagination, all the hopelessness of his position, and worst of all his own fault. How far do you agree/disagree? Guys, there's 3 things to focus on here. The emotions of Stepan, the emotions of Dolly, and the failure of the relationship. Go back through the extract, starting at the line that is detailed to the end, and try and identify where we can agree and or disagree with that statement before I show you some support and my opening. Consider the following bullet points listed there, guys. Quarrel, hopelessness, his own fault, won't forgive me, despair, unpleasant, horror, indignation, disgraceful. Those are the things that I would be focusing in on in my answer. Again, have a go yourself, 20 to 25 minutes. I'm going to show you my opening now, see if it helps you. I agree with the statement. Stephen's emotions at this point in the extract are mainly negative. Hopelessness of his position. The writer's use of the abstract noun hopelessness suggests that Stephen knows his relationship is going to be difficult to save, and this is compounded by the idea that the subordinate clause highlights him as an individual who is perhaps at fault. Additionally, his hopeless position is magnified by the abstract noun despair and the adjective painful. Both of these words hold connotations of desperation, as if Stephen is unsure what to do. Again, guys, I'm going to show you your success criteria. Time yourself 20 to 25 minutes and have a go. Success criteria is analysis of language and structure, subject terminology, paragraphs, and alternative interpretations where possible. Have a go. Again, send them to me if you need. Your mark sheet is here, so annotate yourself and see how successful you've been before we move to the big question, question 5, for 40 marks. Question 5 asks you to use an image to create a description or write a story. Your image is here. That is the image I will be describing in a moment, which is a woman and a Karenina with a black veil on. I'll show you my example and then have a go. So my example is as follows. A black veil was suspended over her face, almost like a mask, but failing in the disguising of her face. Everyone recognised her. She was a modern-day Judas Iscariot. Her movements radiated treachery. She was a sinner, and in the eyes of God and high society, she would pay a high price. Lust seemed so natural to humanity, and she was a temptress. It almost wasn't her fault. Beauty was her most captivating quality, and yet her most lethal weapon. One would be forgiven for imagining similar historic women, Medusa, Pandora, even Marilyn Monroe. Women destroyed by their own exteriors and women famed for their fragile facades. But she felt safe under the veil. It covered her eyes, and in her eyes vulnerable emotions could be seen: loneliness, suspicion, insecurity. So guys, 40 marks, it needs an extended answer, 2 sides, 45 minutes. Success criteria is ambitious vocab, paragraphing, a range of punctuation. We know that we need simile, metaphor, personification, if we can, pathetic fallacy. Be really creative. Again, send your answers to me. I look forward to hearing them. If you need anything else, it's at Stacey Ray. Massive good luck, guys.